Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Thursday, September 4th, 2025. All right, this episode of Anti-War News is sponsored by the Expat Money Online Summit, which returns this October. This is the third year in a row that they are sponsoring the show and that we are helping promote the event. And the Expat Money Summit is hosted by Mikkel Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, a friend of ours at antiwar.com. And this free online event is packed with real strategies that you can use right now, like acquiring second residencies and citizenships, legally mitigating taxes, purchasing international real estate, setting up offshore banking, and more. This year's summit is focused on Latin America, and for very good reason, with all of the changing dynamics down there, and that is where Mikkel is based as well. So over 3 jam-packed days from October 10th to the 12th, Mikkel is bringing together top-tier experts to help you build your offshore plan B quickly and effectively in the region. Head over to expatmoneysummit.com to reserve your free ticket today. And once again, I will be speaking on one of the exclusive VIP panels. So if you want to get a VIP ticket, listeners of this show can use the code ANTIWAR for 20% off a VIP ticket, which includes lifetime replays, exclusive panels, and more. So go to expatmoneysummit.com and don't forget to use that code ANTIWAR if you want a VIP ticket for 20% off. Once again, expatmoneysummit.com. All right, the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, Hegseth will not rule out Venezuela regime change. So Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth on Wednesday did not rule out the possibility of the U.S. military pursuing regime change in Venezuela and suggested more U.S. strikes on boats in the region were coming. And he made the comments in an interview on Fox News on Wednesday morning, the day after the U.S. bombed a boat in the southern Caribbean that it claimed without evidence was carrying drugs, marking the first U.S. kinetic military action in the name of combating drug trafficking, though, as we've been discussing, the real purpose of the attack may be part of a new push to oust Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So Hegseth said, quote, "We have assets in the air, assets in the water, assets on ships, because this is a deadly serious mission for us, and it won't stop with just this strike. Anyone else trafficking in those waters who we know is a designated narco-terrorist will face the same fate," end quote. When asked if the goal was regime change in Venezuela, Hegseth said that that was a presidential decision and added that the U.S. military is prepared with everything that it has. So Brandon P. Buck, who is a historian and foreign policy research fellow at the Cato Institute, I got a quote from him about this because Brandon, he's someone I really like. I've been following his work for a long time. The history that he has studied is so interesting to me. He wrote a dissertation on right-wing opposition to war in the United States, which I've been meaning to dig into it, but I've read a lot of his other articles about his research of that topic. But he's also done a lot of work. He's a veteran as well, and he's also done a lot of work on the potential for turning the war on drugs hot, which essentially has happened. This merger of the war on drugs and the war on terror that we are seeing happen. So I wanted to get a quote from him to have someone smarter and more articulate than me kind of lay out the issues with what's happening here. So this is what Brandon told me. He said, quote, "The U.S. military strike on an alleged drug trafficking boat is a significant escalation in the long and failed war on drugs. It is unclear if the administration's goal of deterring drug trafficking through lethal force will be achieved, but such a strike is unlikely to succeed in this way. As long as the United States remains a multi-billion-dollar drug market, criminal organizations will continue to take risks for massive profits. One strike on one drug-running boat is unlikely to change that calculus," end quote. Buck also noted that it was unclear what the administration's real goal is. He said, quote, "The strike also raises alarming questions about its true near and long-term objectives. It is plausible that the Trump administration is using the strike as a trial balloon for expanded military action against cartels throughout the region or against the Maduro regime in Venezuela. Either would present troubling questions about executive authority to authorize military action in a post-global war on terror world and significantly raise the likelihood of plunging the U.S. into another prolonged war, end quote. And this is something I just did Dave Smith's show, Part of the Problem. We recorded earlier on Wednesday, and then it went up on YouTube Wednesday night. And we discussed this and kind of this fact that as long as the demand is still there for the drugs in this country, they're going to find their way in. So as we've been covering, it's just important to mention kind of how this does appear to be shaping toward a regime change effort. The U.S. is claiming that Maduro is the leader of a cartel, the so-called Cartel of the Suns, which is not a real organization. It's just a term used to describe what they allege is a network of Venezuelan officials, lower level, involved in drug trafficking. They increased the bounty on its head to $50 million. Hegseth mentioned this stuff. We've seen U.S. officials tell Axios this could be Noriega Part 2, referring to the U.S. invasion of Panama, though that seems very unlikely, but who knows? I mean, this is all uncharted waters that we're in at the moment. All right, so the next one here, construction at Israel's nuclear weapons site. So satellite images show construction work on a major new facility at the nuclear facility in Dimona, Israel, the location of Israel's secret nuclear weapons program. And this was reported by the Associated Press on Wednesday. So Israel is believed to have somewhere between 90 and 300 nuclear warheads, but the real figure is unknown, since both Israel and the U.S. do not officially acknowledge that the nuclear stockpiles exist. Israel is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and its secret nuclear weapons program is not subject to any international inspections. One reason why the U.S. maintains this policy of ambiguity around Israel's nuclear weapons program is to allow the U.S. to provide U.S. military assistance, military aid, without worrying about the Symington Amendment, which is a foreign assistance law that was added in the 1970s that prohibits aid to countries that traffic in nuclear enrichment equipment or technology outside of international safeguards. And again, Israel is not a signatory to the NPT, so they are outside of the international safeguards, no IAEA inspections. So the Dimona nuclear site in the Negev Desert, known formally as the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center, has had a heavy water reactor operating there since the 1960s. So AP reporter John Gambrell said in a video report, quote, that heavy water reactor, experts say, provides Israel with the plutonium for its nuclear weapons, as well as the isotope tritium. That isotope is used to boost and also miniaturize nuclear weapons down to fit onto missile warheads, end quote. He said that experts and AP's own analysis of the satellite images show that the project that's happening here could be a number of things, including they're saying it could be a new heavy water reactor that could allow Israel to potentially build more nuclear weapons or potentially to service the ones that they already have. The report said that the heavy water reactor at Dimona has been operating far longer than similar reactors from the same era, suggesting that it may need to be replaced or retrofitted soon. Daryl Kimball, the executive director of the Arms Control Association, told AP that if it is a new heavy water reactor, then Israel is either seeking to maintain the capability to produce spent fuel that they can process to separate plutonium for more nuclear weapons, or they are building a facility to maintain their arsenal or build additional warheads. And this report comes a few months after the U.S. and Israel launched a war on Iran under the pretext of stopping them from developing nuclear weapons, even though there was no evidence that they were moving in that direction. But the allegation is that they have some kind of designs for a secret nuclear weapons program. And I mean, Iran has pointed out throughout all of this the fact that Israel is the one with the secret nuclear weapons program. They are not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They probably have hundreds of nukes. Yet we're supposed to all get worked up about this idea of Iran and their nuclear program. It really shows the hypocrisy, just this whole situation. And again, the fact that the U.S. doesn't acknowledge it and they don't pressure Israel to sign the NPT. and they are the only nuclear-armed power in the Middle East. Turkey hosts U.S. nuclear weapons as part of NATO's nuclear sharing program, but they don't have their own. So Israel is the only nuclear-armed power. And one talking point that you often see from U.S. and Israeli officials, they say, oh, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, that's going to start a nuclear arms race in the region, which, of course, ignores the fact that Israel already has nukes. All right, so the next one here, Rubio signals that the U.S. will not oppose Israeli West Bank annexation. So Israeli officials have told Axios that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has signaled in private meetings that the U.S. will not oppose Israel if it moves to formally annex parts of the West Bank, the Israeli-occupied West Bank, something Israeli officials are considering doing in response to Western countries planning to recognize a Palestinian state. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee previously told Axios that the Trump administration doesn't yet have an official position on the possibility of annexing territory in the West Bank, but he has also made clear that the administration will not oppose the expansion of Jewish settlements, which are illegal under international law. And this does amount to the de facto annexation of the territory that they're being built on. They're taking that territory away from the Palestinians. And Huckabee has also previously suggested that Palestinians in the West Bank could be removed, and that a Palestinian state could be carved out of a Muslim country. And this is something he's been saying for years, but he's actually said this as the U.S. ambassador to Israel. And then another thing that happened on Wednesday, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who is a West Bank settler himself, long been on the record that he wants to annex the territory, expel the Palestinians. He proposed this plan to annex 82% of the Palestinian territory. And he said in a statement that the plan aims, this is his words, for maximum territory and minimum Arab population. So if you look at this map here, these areas highlighted in yellow, these are 6 Palestinian population centers in the West Bank. They include Ramallah, Nablus, Jenin, Tulkarem, Jericho, and Hebron. And the idea here is to annex all the territory around these 6 cities, and that they will essentially be islands, completely isolated from the other Palestinian areas. And Smotrich says that they will initially be under the Palestinian Authority, but eventually they'll create their own little administrative authorities so they cannot be unified in any way. He's saying, this is where they're going to kill any hope for a Palestinian state. He's demanding that Netanyahu goes ahead with this, and apparently Netanyahu is holding a cabinet meeting on Thursday about the possibility of annexing territory in the West Bank. Again, that language from Smotrich, to maximum territory and minimum Arab population, and they would just keep them isolated in these little areas. And if you're one of those Palestinians in one of those little isolated cities, I mean, what's to make you not think that it could turn into Gaza eventually? And a lot of what they're doing in the West Bank, I think they might be, they're probably trying to provoke the Palestinians to launch some sort of attack, to go into to launch another intifada, and then use that to justify a Gaza-style campaign in the West Bank. I'm sure guys like Smotrich would like to see that happen. All right, so the next one here, IDF and starvation kill 119 Palestinians in Gaza. Gaza's health ministry said on Wednesday that Israeli forces killed at least 113 Palestinians and injured 304 over the previous 24-hour period, as the Israeli military continues its heavy attacks on Gaza City and strikes elsewhere in the Strip. On top of the violent deaths, the health ministry said that it recorded another 6 starvation deaths due to the Israeli siege. And a UN and US-backed hunger monitors have declared that famine is taking place in Gaza City. Israeli troops and tanks pushed further into Gaza City, the Gaza City neighborhood of Sheikh Radwan on Wednesday, destroying houses and tanks as part of their campaign to forcibly displace all of the civilians sheltering in the city. You see this picture here. This is a woman holding her grandson, her 3-year-old grandson, who survived an Israeli airstrike that killed his parents and his sisters. So Zakia Sami, a 60-year-old mother of 5 in Gaza City, told Reuters, quote, Sheikh Radwan is being burnt upside down. The occupation destroyed houses, burnt tents, and drones played audio messages ordering people to leave the area. If the takeover of the city of the city isn't stopped, we might die, and we are not going to forgive anyone who stands and watches without doing anything to prevent our death, end quote. Residents said that the Israeli military dropped grenades on 3 schools in Sheikh Radwan where displaced Palestinians were sheltering, setting tents on fire. 972 magazine reported in July that the Israeli military regularly uses drones to drop grenades on civilians to enforce evacuation orders. Residents also told Reuters that the IDF is using explosive-laden armored vehicles to destroy homes in Sheikh Radwan. At least 15 people, including 2 children and 4 women, were killed by strikes in the area on Wednesday. The Israeli military is telling civilians in Gaza City to flee to the south, but it also continues to bomb southern Gaza. According to Nasser Hospital in the southern city of Khan Yunis, at least 16 Palestinians were killed, including 10 who were seeking aid in the area. And the health ministry said that it recorded the total killing of 33 aid seekers over the previous 24 hours. All right, so the next one here. Hamas reiterates its willingness to release all Israeli captives. This is the wrong link here, and that's probably my fault. Sorry about that. I just got to get to the right story. All right, so Hamas on Wednesday released a statement reiterating its long-standing offer to release all remaining Israeli captives in Gaza in exchange for a permanent ceasefire deal and Israeli withdrawal from the Strip. The statement came after President Trump said in a post on Truth Social that Hamas must release the 20 Israelis who are believed to be alive. Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "Tell Hamas to immediately give back all 20 hostages, not 2 or 5 or 7, and things will change rapidly. It will end," end quote. So Hamas recently accepted a temporary ceasefire deal proposed by mediators Qatar and Egypt that was virtually identical to a framework previously approved by the U.S. and Israel. And in their statement, Hamas said that it was still awaiting Israel's response to that proposal. So for the longest time, Hamas's position was that they wouldn't agree to a deal unless it's permanent ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal. And Israel's position is, no, we're only going to do this temporary deal. So now that Hamas has accepted something temporary, the narrative is, oh, we're only going to agree to a comprehensive deal. So then Trump tweets this out or truths it out, whatever they call it, on Truth Social. And he says, tell them to, give back all the hostages, all the ones that are alive, at least he's talking about here. And so Hamas, basically their response was that we're willing to do that. We're willing to release all the hostages in exchange for a permanent deal. And they laid out their conditions. So Hamas said, quote, "In this context, the movement reiterates its readiness to proceed with a comprehensive deal under which all of the enemy's captives held by the resistance would be released in exchange for an agreed number of Palestinian prisoners held by the occupation as part of an agreement that ends the war on the Gaza Strip, withdraws all occupation forces from the entire Strip, opens the crossings for the entry of all the Strip's needs, and begins the reconstruction process," end quote. Hamas also reiterated its position that it's willing to cede governance of Gaza to what they call an independent national administration of technocrats, and that would be Palestinians, that would manage all affairs of the Gaza Strip and resume all the responsibilities. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been responsible for blocking at least 7 ceasefire deals throughout his genocidal war, and that is according to a big report that recently came out from Israeli media. They counted that there was at least 7 times where a deal was about to be reached and he did something to block it. Netanyahu has dismissed Hamas's statement, calling it more spin. And according to the Times of Israel, he laid out 5 conditions for a permanent deal, including Israeli security control of Gaza, which that sounds like it means long-term military occupation. Another condition is the disarmament of Hamas, and Hamas's position on that. They're saying that they will not disarm unless there's a Palestinian state or if there's some sort of Palestinian force that could replace their military wing. That's been their position. But they're reiterating, that they're willing to release all the hostages at once in exchange for some sort of permanent deal. But it's obvious Netanyahu doesn't want anything like that. All right, so the next one here, Hamas. Oh, no, I just did that one. 21,000 Palestinian children disabled by Israeli onslaught in Gaza. This one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So a UN agency said that tens of thousands of Palestinian children have been maimed by Israeli attacks in Gaza over the past 23 months. And over 18,000 Palestinian children have been killed, according to the health ministry's confirmed identified deaths. Studies have shown that their numbers are likely a significant undercount. That's what all the studies that have looked into the numbers, all the serious studies have found. So that 18,000 number is probably an undercount. And the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities reported on Wednesday that over 40,000 Palestinian children have been injured by Israeli attacks, and 21,000 of them have been left with a disability, and many of them have lost limbs. It's like just a record number of child amputees in this conflict, just absolutely horrific. All right, so the next one here, Israel expects to displace 1 million Palestinians in Gaza. So this is another one from Kyle. So this is something we already know. I mean, the reports have said, that Israel's plan is to forcibly displace more than 1 million Palestinians in Gaza City. But here, an Israeli official actually said this to journalists, saying that they're expecting to displace 1 million Palestinians. And a senior military official said that 70,000 Palestinians have already fled their homes in Gaza City. But as far as I know, not all of them have gone south. They want all of them to go south, and then their plan is to completely raze and destroy Gaza City. All right, so the next one here, Israeli drones drop grenades on UNIFIL in Lebanon. So this article is from Jason Ditz. So the UNIFIL reported, and the UNIFIL is the UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, that Tuesday morning near the Lebanese village of Marwahin, Israeli drones approached their peacekeepers and dropped stun grenades within 20 meters of them. The IDF confirmed the incident. The UN is saying that it's one of the most serious attacks on UNIFIL personnel. The IDF is claiming that they did not deliberately mean to target them. They said that they believed they were dropping them on Hezbollah members in the area. But I think the UNIFIL peacekeepers are... they wear uniforms, and they're blue. I think they're pretty easy to spot. And they also said that they gave the IDF advance notice that they would be in the area. So it's hard to believe that they did this on accident here. All right, so the next one here, Israeli troops raid homes in Syria's Quneitra, capture 7 locals. Another one from Jason. So ongoing Israeli military raids in southern Syria. Israeli troops carried out a pre-dawn raid against homes in Syria's Quneitra governorate, raiding homes in the town of Al-Asha and capturing 7 young men. The Israeli military said they were suspected of terrorist activities. Syrian state media reported that 30 Israeli troops participated in the raid, and they deployed from the Israeli base in the Juba al-Kushub forest. Israel established this base and several others within southwest Syria since they invaded in December. An Israeli military convoy also entered the part of Al-Asha leading toward Al-Asba, another village, and they established a military checkpoint there. Israeli drones were reported active overhead, though no attacks were reported. Locals were reportedly panicking after the Israeli troops captured the youths in the raid. And there was apparently some shelling, no word on any casualties there, but this is kind of the ongoing Israeli military occupation of this part of southwest Syria that they invaded after the regime change that ousted Bashar al-Assad. All right, the next one here, Trump, Xi, and Putin are conspiring. Oh, sorry, I read that wrong. Trump says that Xi, Putin, and Kim are conspiring against the U.S. So as Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted more than 20 world leaders in Beijing for a military parade commemorating the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, President Trump accused the Chinese leader, along with Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, of conspiring against the U.S. So I'm just going to read Trump's long Truth Social post. It's always hard to pull out like snippets from his posts to give you, an idea of what he's saying. With Trump, I feel like you just got to put in the whole thing, the full context. So Trump said, quote, "The big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood that the United States of America gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader." So he's talking about World War II, obviously. Many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. I hope that they are rightfully honored and remembered for their bravery and sacrifice. May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America, end quote. So if you see this picture here, the pictures that came out of the military parade, this is Chinese President Xi Jinping, flanked by Putin and Kim Jong-un. And behind them is just a huge group of world leaders and officials from other countries, including Lukashenko of Belarus. You have the Iranian President Pezeshkian there. In the back, in the far right, you could see Robert Fico, the president of, or prime minister. Is he president or prime minister? Prime minister of Slovakia, who, as far as I know, is the only leader from a European or Western country that attended. But there were other Western officials there, including, you could see Hungary's foreign minister in the back. See the president of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan in the front there. Let's see, who else was there? I mentioned Uzbekistan, the Mongolia's president. In total, there was 26 world leaders at this event. According to the South China Morning Post, the event marked the first time that the leaders of Russia, China, and North Korea gathered together since Mao Zedong, Kim's grandfather Kim Il-sung, and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev watched another military parade in Beijing in 1959. So that does seem significant. And the parade featured more than 10,000 Chinese soldiers, over 100 aircraft, and hundreds of weapons. And during his speech, which comes amid these growing tensions with the U.S. over the trade war and the U.S. military buildup in the Asia-Pacific, what did he say? She said that the world was facing critical choices. The Chinese leader said, quote, "Today, humanity is faced with the choice of peace or war, dialogue or confrontation, win-win or zero sum," end quote. And he's using language there that you often see Chinese officials use to criticize U.S. policies. And she delivered a similar message at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, China, that happened a few days earlier. So the multipolar world does seem to be rising a bit. And this is, U.S. policies have really driven these countries together, sanctions, threats, and everything. All right, so the next one, the last story here, Trump offers to send more troops to Poland. So President Trump on Wednesday hosted Poland's new president, Karol Nawrocki, at the White House and assured him that the U.S. will maintain a robust military presence in Poland and even offered to send more troops to the country. Trump told reporters, quote, "We'll put more there if they want. They'll be staying in Poland," end quote. And he was answering a question because there's been talk from some administration officials about reducing the U.S. military presence in Europe. But he's saying, no, we're going to stay in Poland. If they want more, we'll send more. According to State Department numbers from January 2025, the U.S. has about 10,000 troops in Poland. And the U.S. significantly surged the number of troops that it had deployed in Poland following the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine and has maintained those levels. Before the Russian invasion, the U.S. had about 5,500 troops in Poland under a deal signed in 2019 during the first Trump administration that added 1,000 troops. So before that, it was 4,500. Then they added 1,000 troops, and now there's 10,000. And Trump's talking about sending more. And this is what they call NATO's so-called Eastern Flank, one of the countries that joined NATO after the end of the Cold War. And in 2023, something pretty significant happened. The U.S. established its first permanent military base east of the German border in Europe. Under the 1997 NATO-Russia Founding Act, NATO pledged that it would not establish permanent bases in these countries that it was bringing into NATO after the end of the Cold War. NATO, their argument is that Russia has violated the Founding Act, with the invasion of Ukraine. But the fact is, these troops aren't going anywhere. Like this base in Poland is officially the first permanent U.S. base, but in all these other countries, it's not like anybody is under any illusion that the U.S. is going to start pulling troops out, even if their presence isn't technically permanent. Even though there was some talk among Trump administration officials about reducing the U.S. presence in Europe. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and it might even increase, according to Trump. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our Viewpoints. One from Ted Snyder. Why is there still no peace in Ukraine? The unusual suspects. One from Judge Napolitano. The feds defend their tortures again. One from Jose Nino. Illusion of Israeli self-sufficiency in intelligence. One from William D. Hartung. Researching the roots of the war. Our spotlight is from Harrison Berger. The U.S. should be skeptical about Iran-backed militants. That's over at the American Conservative. Harrison just interviewed me recently. I don't think that's up yet, but I'll share it when it comes out. Again, I did part of the problem with Dave Smith, so go check that out. I'll try to remember to put the link in the description. But that is it. Another reminder, did I mention it at the top of the show? I think I failed to, that we are doing our fundraiser at antiwar.com, and right now we have matching funds. So every dollar that you donate will be doubled, which is really great. Usually it takes us a while to get matching funds, and we usually actually can't get like the full half. So this is very exciting, and hopefully we could wrap up the fundraiser quickly and focus on our work. So again, that is antiwar.com/donate. That's it for me. I will be back tomorrow. One more show this week. Thanks for listening.